Hello, and welcome to the Onfinity training session. In this session, we will explore the blanket purchase order to purchase order process, a strategic procurement workflow that enables organization to manage reoccurring purchase efficiently while managing control over pricing and delivery schedules. Let's begin by reviewing our agenda. We will walk through each stage of the blanket purchase order to purchase order process. We'll explore its business relevance, understand how it supports long-term procurement planning, and see how Onfinity facilitates this entire process seamlessly within the system. The objective of this session is to enable you to understand the blanket purchase order to the purchase order process and its associated terms in the context of business processes. It also enables you to test blanket purchase to purchase order process in the context of business requirements. Next, we have the prerequisites. Before we proceed, make sure that the necessary prerequisites are met. You will need access to the Onfinity platform with a valid user ID and password. Onfinity Basic Setup and Master Data Setup must be configured and completed and available. Let's now begin the session with the blanket purchase order to purchase order process use case. In this segment, we'll explore the process through a practical scenario to understand its application more clearly. This approach will help us gain insight into why organizations use blanket purchase orders and how it contributes to effective procurement planning and streamlined execution. Sonic Venture is a technology company specializing in the assembly of customized desktop unit for enterprise clients, including the provision of desktops and related accessories. To streamline procurement and maintain consistent pricing, the procurement team establishes a blanket purchase order, BPO, within an authorized vendor for 1,500 units of each item. This BPO is designed to cover recurring requirements of desktop and accessories over a 3-month period. Instead of creating new order each time, the company issue individual purchase order each month with 500 units. Under the BPO, whenever items are required for assembly process. Upon delivery, the goods are inspected and a goods receipt note GRN is generated to confirm the receipt. Finally, the finance team processes the AP invoice to ensure that the invoice is matched against the PO and GRN, validating quantity and price accuracy. Next, we'll take a look at the blanket purchase order to purchase order process flow, which outlines a high-level overview of the procurement workflow. This process begins with the creation of a blanket purchase order, BPO, a long-term agreement with a vendor. As specific requirements arise, individual release purchase orders are issued against the blanket order. The process concludes with the goods receipt note to confirm receipt of items, followed by invoice processing, ensuring accuracy, traceability, and efficiency throughout the procurement cycle. Before we move into the system, let's first understand the basic master data required for executing the blanket purchase order to purchase order process. To record a blanket purchase order to purchase order process, here are some basic masters which must be available in the system: a vendor, product, or charge, attribute set instance, the relevant unit of measure, the applicable currency, a price list, valid payment term, payment method, and the correct warehouse. These are the essential building blocks for initiating and processing a blanket purchase order through to a purchase order. Now that we've covered the foundational elements and key concepts involved in the blanket purchase order to purchase order process, let's move into the Onfinity system and explore the step-by-step process in action. To begin, open the Onfinity link in your browser, log in using your user ID and password, enter your valid user ID, enter your password, and then click on Login to access the system. Once you log into the Onfinity system, you'll arrive at the home page, where you'll see a variety of widgets referred to as mosaics. These mosaics offer real-time data insights that help with monitoring and analysis across various business processes. The layout is fully customizable, so don't worry if your screen looks slightly different. You can manually adjust and rearrange the mosaics based on your preferences or business requirements. To begin the process based on our use case, we'll first open the blanket purchase order screen. There are two ways to access it. You can search for Blanket Purchase Order using the menu Search utility, or navigate through the Procurement Management, go to the Purchase Order module and click on Blanket Purchase Order. Once selected, the system will open the Blanket Purchase Order screen, and you'll land on its landing page, where a variety of mosaics are available. Before moving forward, let's quickly recap the concept. A blanket purchase order, or BPO, is a long-term procurement agreement between an organization and a supplier. It outlines pre-approved pricing and terms for goods or services to be delivered periodically over a specified time frame. On this screen, the available mosaics help you filter records based on your needs. You'll find options like warehouse, vendor, and document status, all of which can be used for filtering. Or, if you're looking to create a new record, you can simply click on the New Record mosaic to begin the process. It will open the screen in Single Record View, where you need to select the organization under which this blanket purchase order is being created. Next, choose the target document type, which helps in identifying and processing the transaction as a blanket purchase order. The date ordered refers to the date on which you're recording this BPO into the system. Then enter the order valid from date. This defines the start date from which the order becomes active and valid for use. For now, let's keep it the same as the date ordered. As per our use case, the order valid to date would be 25th of September 2025, since the order is planned to span across 3 months. We've already discussed control type settings in our previous session. If you haven't watched that yet, it's recommended to go through it first for better clarity. In that session, we created a blanket purchase order using the Create Line from Requisition button, which allows us to insert lines directly by referencing a requisition. This is an important part of the standard business process, where a formal request is made before initiating any order. Now, let's talk about the control types available on this screen. If you select Price and Quantity, the system will restrict you from changing the unit price or exceeding the estimated quantity on the release purchase order. This ensures consistency with the predefined agreement in the blanket purchase order. If you choose Price, only the prices will be locked. Users won't be able to modify the unit price, but quantity adjustments will still be allowed. Similarly, if you select Quantity, the system will prevent users from ordering more than the specified estimated quantity, while prices remain flexible. For now, we will proceed with Price and Quantity, as it is a more logical choice for maintaining strict control under a blanket agreement. Next, we need to select the vendor for this blanket purchase order. Once selected, all related details, such as the invoice business partner, locations, contact information, and billing addresses, are automatically updated. These values come directly from the vendor master screen, so there's no need to fill in these fields manually. As a key configuration note, a vendor will only appear on the blanket purchase order screen if the Allow Blanket PO check button is marked as true on their vendor master record. Let's verify that. From the vendor field on the BPO screen, click to zoom into the vendor master and open the record in Single Record View. Now, navigate to the Additional Conditions tab, where you'll find the check button labeled Allow Blanket PO. Ensure this is checked, only then will the vendor be available for selection when creating a blanket purchase order. Now, let's move back to the blanket purchase order screen. Here, you can choose to enter a description if there are any additional notes relevant to this record. However, this field is purely informational and has no functional impact, so we can leave it blank for now. You may also set the priority of the order. For example, if this is a critical requirement, you can mark it as high priority, or simply leave it as low priority, depending on your business needs. Next, you'll need to select the warehouse where the goods will be received. Make sure the Allow Blanket Order checkbox is marked as true in the warehouse master, otherwise it won't be available for selection here. As you can see, the price list, payment terms, and payment method fields are auto-populated. These values are pulled directly from the vendor master configuration. However, if needed, you can update them manually at this stage. Let's now set the payment term for this example. We'll go with 20 days. If needed, the payment method can also be adjusted. For instance, if the vendor prefers payment via a different mode, such as online transfer, it can be updated accordingly. These configurations, payment terms, and payment methods are typically predefined during master data setup. If you require further clarity on how these values are configured, you may refer to the respective master data training sessions. The representative field indicates the person who is creating this record. Since I am currently logged in as Sonic Admin, that is automatically shown here. Lastly, the Incoterm field is applicable if the transaction involves international trading, where one of the parties is located outside the country. If that's the case, you can select the relevant Incoterm to define the delivery and logistics terms between buyer and seller. Once all the required header fields have been filled, click on the Save Record button to save the blanket purchase order header. After saving the header, lines can be added in two ways, either directly from the composite view or by navigating to the Lines tab using the Lines tab button. Additionally, within the Header tab, you'll notice a process button titled Create Line from Requisition. This process was covered in detail in our previous session. If you haven't yet reviewed it, we recommend doing so to understand how this process works in a real business flow. Another process button available here is Copy from Another Blanket. This allows you to reuse lines from an existing blanket purchase order. To use this feature, simply click on the button, confirm the prompt, and then enter the document number of the existing blanket purchase order. Click OK, and the corresponding lines will be inserted automatically into the current record. For now, we will not use the Copy from Another Blanket option, as we are going to insert different items and quantities for this blanket purchase order. Let's close this for now and continue with manual line entry. Now proceed to add the item lines. Click on the Line tab button to navigate to the Lines tab. From here, click on New Record. This action will open the screen in single record view, allowing us to enter item-level details. Now, select the product that needs to be procured under this blanket purchase order. Let's start by adding our first item, the LG monitor. As per our use case, the estimated quantity is 1,500 units. This is the total quantity we expect to procure under this blanket purchase order. Now, the quantity field here represents the amount to be released. While it's possible to adjust quantities manually in the release purchase order, the more efficient method is to enter the full estimated quantity here and then control the actual procurement installment-wise during the release stage. This approach simplifies tracking and ensures that the remaining quantity is automatically calculated after each release. Also, an important point to note, the total released quantity cannot exceed the estimated quantity defined in the blanket order. Also, during the creation of a release purchase order, the system will validate the quantity being released against the remaining quantity in the blanket order. If you attempt to release more than what's available, the system will block the action, maintaining compliance with the blanket agreement. So, for now, we'll enter 1,500 units in both estimated quantity and quantity fields and save the record. Now click New Record, and let's proceed to add our next product, the CPU cabinet. First, enter the estimated quantity. This is the total quantity we plan to procure under this blanket purchase order. Next, enter the quantity you intend to procure initially. In our case, this will also be 1,500 units. By default, the price is pulled directly from the price list that is linked with the vendor. However, if there's a mutual agreement with the vendor for a different price, you can manually update the unit price here before saving the record. Now, for this product, there's no attribute instance required, so we'll skip that part. Click on New Record to add the next product. This time we'll add RAM. Since this product has an attribute set, you'll need to select the correct attribute from the available list. Let's go with the existing option, 6 GB RAM, and confirm it by clicking OK. Once the attribute is selected, enter the required quantity and click Save. Or, if you want to move directly to the next product, you can use the Save and Add option. This will save the current line and immediately open a new one for the next entry. Next, let's add the product SSD, which also has attribute options defined. Click on the Attribute Set Instance field, and from the list, select the appropriate variant. For our case, let's go with 512 GB. Confirm your selection by clicking OK. Now, enter the estimated quantity, which is the total quantity we anticipate procuring over the course of the agreement, and the quantity. In this case, we'll set both values to 1,500 units. Once entered, click Save to confirm the line. Now, we'll continue by clicking New Record to add the next product. Select Intel i7 CPU from the product field. Again, specify both the estimated and initial quantities. Let's assume 1,500 units. Then click Save and New to proceed to the next item. Repeat this same process for the remaining products in your procurement list. Next, let's add mouse. Enter both the estimated and quantity values. Click Save and Add New to continue. Now, choose Keyboard, enter the required quantities, and again, click Save. Once all product lines are added, click the back button to return to the grid view. This lets you review all the lines you've added at a glance and quickly verify if anything is missing. Looking at the grid, we see monitor, cabinet, RAM, SSD, CPU, mouse, and keyboard have been added successfully. It appears we're missing the motherboard from our list. Let's go ahead and add the motherboard now. Click on New Record, enter the product name, provide the estimated quantity, followed by the quantity, and then click Save to complete the entry. If you want to add any additional charges, such as warranty costs, you can do that by using the Charge field. Instead of selecting a product, you simply choose a predefined charge type, like warranty, which must be set up in the system beforehand. These charges can be managed and applied just like products. However, for our current scenario, we are focusing only on physical items, so we'll skip this part for now. Now, you might be wondering, why do we enter both the estimation quantity and the quantity fields in the blanket purchase order? Well, here's the reason. The estimation quantity represents the total expected requirement for that item over the entire duration of the blanket purchase order. It's essentially your forecasted demand, the full quantity you anticipate needing from the vendor throughout the validity period. On the other hand, the quantity field represents the immediate or planned quantity to be released in the upcoming release purchase order. For example, your first installment of procurement. Well, in certain use cases, the business prefers to control the release quantity directly from the blanket order, meaning they don't want to change quantities later at the time of releasing the purchase order. For example, if we expect to release 500 units in the upcoming month, we can directly enter that quantity here in the blanket order. When that release is completed, the quantity used becomes 0, and when we're ready for the next release, we simply reactivate the blanket order, update the new quantity, say the remaining 1,000, and then complete it again. This distinction allows you to maintain better control and tracking over what's been planned versus what's actually being released. Also, each time you update the quantity and complete the blanket again, the line history will be automatically updated, keeping track of all revisions made over time. For this demonstration, we'll follow the more flexible and standard approach. We'll keep the estimated quantity and release quantity the same on the blanket purchase order and handle any quantity changes manually at the time of release. This keeps the process clean and ensures clarity at each release stage. Let's now move back to the Header tab and take a closer look at the header panel of the blanket purchase order screen. This section offers a concise summary of the key fields involved in this transaction. Here's what each of them means. Organization, the legal entity under which the transaction is being recorded. Document number, a unique identifier for the blanket purchase order, generated by the system for tracking and referencing. Date ordered, the date on which the blanket purchase order is being created. Order valid to, the date until which this blanket purchase order remains valid. It defines the timeline for releasing individual purchase orders under this agreement. Warehouse, the designated warehouse where goods will be received once the release orders are fulfilled. Control type. This setting determines whether users are restricted from changing price, quantity, or both when creating release purchase orders from this blanket. Grand total. The total estimated value of the blanket purchase order based on all line items. Currency. The currency in which this transaction is being recorded, usually inherited from the price list. Document status indicates the current status of the transaction, such as drafted or completed. Document action button. This is a process button used to move the document to the next stage, such as completing the record. Not posted button. Once the document is completed, the posting button is used to update the necessary accounting ledger entries, if applicable. Now that we've reviewed all the key fields, let's move ahead and complete this blanket purchase order by clicking on the Document Action button available in the header panel. Once prompted, confirm by clicking OK. After the record is successfully completed, you'll notice that the Release Purchase Order button is now enabled. Click on this button and confirm the action when prompted. The system will then create the corresponding release purchase order, and you'll see a confirmation message displayed at the bottom of the screen. You can also copy the release order number from here for easy reference. To proceed with this newly created release order, navigate to the Purchase Order module located under the Procurement Management module. Simply click on Purchase Order to continue with the next step in the process that will open the Purchase Order screen. This is the screen where all release purchase orders are maintained. To locate our newly created release order, simply click on the View Records mosaic. Select the created record and click on the document number hyperlink to view record in single record view. You'll now see the release purchase order that was created based on the details entered in the blanket purchase order. All key fields, including vendor, pricing, and product information, have been carried over automatically. At this stage, you can make adjustments to the quantity that is being released for the current month. For our use case, let's enter a quantity of 500. You can update this quantity directly from the composite view, making it easy to manage installment-based deliveries. You don't necessarily need to go to the Line tab to update the quantities. However, if preferred, you can do so by navigating to the Line tab. Simply click on the line number hyperlink to open the record in single record view. Once you're in the single record view, just enter the desired quantity for that line. Repeat the same for all product lines where the quantity needs to be updated. Once all quantities are set as required, we're ready to proceed with the completion of this purchase order. Now we'll move back to the grid view by clicking the Back option. This allows us to quickly verify that all product line quantities have been updated correctly. Once confirmed, we're ready to move ahead. Navigate back to the Header tab to proceed further. Click on the Complete option from the Document Action button located in the header panel of this record, and confirm by clicking OK. Once the purchase order is successfully completed and the quantity is received, we can now move forward to the Goods Receipt Note, or GRN, to acknowledge the receipt and update stock levels in the warehouse. Now, we need to navigate to the Material Management module. Under the Storage Operations, you'll find the Goods Receipt Note screen. Click on Goods Receipt Note to land on its landing page, where you can view and filter existing records. You can also analyze data using the available charts. If you notice, the expected GRN mosaic displays your completed release purchase order. This allows you to generate the GRN directly from here. In our previous session, we created the GRN using the expected GRN mosaic. However, in this session, we'll create the GRN manually, step by step. To create the Goods Receipt Note manually, click on the New Record mosaic. This opens the screen in single record view. The organization is pre-filled based on your login credentials. Next, select the appropriate document type and then enter the movement date. This indicates the date on which the goods were actually received. Now, choose the warehouse where you're receiving the goods. It's important to note that the warehouse selected here must match the one used in the corresponding purchase order. If you notice that our warehouse Sonic Venture East warehouse is not showing up in the list, this is likely because there's a validation on the GRN screen that only displays warehouses where drop shipment is marked as true. This validation supports drop shipment scenarios, which are covered in a separate, dedicated session. However, in our current use case, drop shipment is not required. So what do we need to do? We'll zoom into the warehouse record directly from the warehouse field. Click the warehouse name hyperlink to open the record in single record view. Navigate to the appropriate field and simply mark drop shipment as false. This change will allow us to proceed with our blanket purchase order process without enabling the drop shipment validation on the GRN screen. After saving the changes to the warehouse, return to the goods receipt note screen. Now, we can mark drop shipment as false and simply refresh the warehouse field. This will allow our intended warehouse to become visible and selectable. Next, we need to enter the same vendor that was used in the blanket purchase order. Once the vendor is selected, the related fields, such as vendor location and vendor contact, will be automatically populated based on the vendor master data. The representative field is derived from your login credentials. Since I'm logged in as Sonic Admin, that name appears here by default. Now, select the locator. This indicates the specific storage location within the warehouse where the items will be received. The drop shipment checkbox here is used only if you're processing a drop shipment, which, as we mentioned earlier, is not required for our current scenario. Lastly, you can enter the Incoterm, which is used in international trade to specify the terms of delivery between buyer and seller. For now, we'll leave it blank since this transaction is domestic. Now, let's go ahead and save the header. Once the header is saved, click on the Create Lines From button. This will open the Create Lines From window, allowing you to select the relevant purchase order. In the order field, you can enter the document number directly to quickly locate your purchase order. Once located, simply select the order. You will then see a list of all the products included in that purchase order. If you're receiving a partial quantity, you have the option to adjust the quantity here in the form. Or you can wait and make changes after the lines are inserted. After selecting the required lines, click OK. Your selected products will now be inserted into the goods receipt note. You can verify the inserted products from the composite view. Once you've reviewed and confirmed that all details are correct, you can proceed to complete the GRN. After the goods receipt note is completed, the next step is AP invoice creation. If the finance team has access to the GRN screen, they can generate the AP invoice directly by clicking on the Generate Invoice button available within the GRN record. Alternatively, the user can navigate to the Financial Management module. Under Accounts Payable, select the AP invoice screen. This will open the AP invoice landing page, where users can view existing records and analyze trends using the available mosaics. You can use these mosaics to filter records or click on the New Record mosaic to begin creating a new AP invoice. This will open the screen in single record view. If you wish to attach any related documents, such as a scanned copy of the invoice received from the vendor, this can be done in the DMS document panel, which appears if the DMS Document Management System module is enabled. You can close this panel if not required. Now proceed with the following steps. First, select the organization under which the invoice is being recorded. Then, choose the appropriate target document type. You may also enter a description if required. Next, input the reference number received from the vendor for this invoice. For now, let's assume the reference number is AP100072. Next, enter the invoice date, which indicates when you are creating and recording this particular invoice. The representative field is automatically updated based on the logged-in user. This represents the person responsible for creating the invoice. Now select the vendor against whom this invoice is being created. The remaining details, such as payment terms and method, are automatically pulled from the vendor information. However, if any changes were made in the purchase order terms, those can be updated here as well. In our case, the payment term was set to 20 days, and the payment method to online transfer in the purchase order, so we'll make sure these are reflected accordingly. Since we've selected online transfer, We'll also need to choose the appropriate vendor bank account where the payment will be transferred. Please note that all configurations and detailed steps related to the AP invoice process are covered in its dedicated session. You can refer to that session under Financial Management for further insights. For now, we'll go ahead and save the header. Once the header is saved, we can proceed to insert the invoice lines. Now, click on the Create Lines From button. You can either enter the purchase order number directly, search for it, or locate it using the document number of the receipt. If a provisional invoice has already been created for this order, you can also select and insert lines from there. After selecting the relevant product lines, click OK, and the lines will be inserted automatically. Take a moment to verify all the details, and once everything looks accurate, simply complete the record. After completing the AP invoice, you can view the matching information for individual lines in the Lines tab. Navigate to Lines tab. On the right-hand action panel, you'll find options such as Show Matched PO, which displays the matched PO number that corresponds to the invoice line. Similarly, if you wish to check which invoice is matched against this line, you can use the Show Matched Invoice option. These same records will also be visible on the Matched Invoice and Matched Purchase Order screens for further reference. And with that, we've completed the entire process from blanket purchase order to purchase order, followed by goods receipt note, GRN, and accounts payable, AP invoice. Thank you for your attention and engagement. With a clear understanding of the blanket purchase order to purchase order process, you are now equipped to confidently apply these insights within your procurement workflow using Onfinity,